Millions of Americans have trouble paying for their prescription medication. That includes type 1 diabetics. For them, insulin is a life-saving drug.
For somebody like me, it's like the oxygen that you breathe. It is like oxygen you and I breathe, except for me, I have to pay $340 a vial for that oxygen.
These diabetics are making a 12-hour journey to Canada to buy cheaper insulin, which just over the border is about 1/10 of the cost than in the United States.
You'll hear all these US pharmaceutical companies, they will tell you they have coupons, they will tell you they have discount cards, they have patient programs, they have it all. If I could go to extreme couponing, do you think we'd be driving 817 miles?
In the US, the cost of nearly every major brand name drug is on the rise. And for many people, that means being forced to choose between financial insecurity or saving their lives.
What this pill means to me is hooray for stable cancer. It means I'm going to live longer.
But what does that pill cost?
This particular pill is going to be anywhere from $800 to $1,100 at any given time.
The way we pay for medical innovation today has nothing to do with rationality.
That's the most expensive thing in your house, including cars.
Oh yeah, this is worth more than our cars.
It has everything to do with profit maximizing in an environment where we require nothing of the companies.
In this episode of Fault Lines, we investigate what's behind the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs and how the hefty price tag is costing lives. There are at least 1.2 million Americans with type 1 diabetes, an autoimmune disease that has no cure. And once a person has it, they're often required to take insulin multiple times a day for the rest of their lives. Insulin's an old drug. It was discovered almost 100 years ago. But in the US, it keeps getting more expensive. You have to leave the country to buy something that you need to live.
Correct. We're being held hostage by these companies and by the US government and our elected officials to pay a ransom for the price of insulin.
Between 2012 and 2016 alone, the price nearly doubled, forcing many Americans to search for other routes to access it. You have an entire busload of Americans coming to Walmart in Canada to buy insulin because this is where they can afford it. It'd be funny if it weren't so sad and serious.
I came from New Jersey to Minneapolis to ride a bus to Canada to buy insulin for $30, and I still think I'm going to save money after doing all that. It's totally impractical, and it's sort of sad that I had to do it at all. It's just something that I require to live, so, it's not optional.
Is this different than the insulin you would get in the US?
It's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
We're so thrilled. We got insulin. I got 9 vials. It would have cost over $3,000 for 9 vials in the United States. It just cost me $243 inside. I think it's showing exactly why we have people dying in America on a weekly, monthly basis. We need legislation passed in America so that no longer people are going to be dying of type 1 diabetes.
But for many people, going across the border to buy cheaper insulin is not a long-term solution. Studies have shown that 1 in 4 Americans with diabetes have rationed their insulin because they couldn't afford it, and this can be a deadly gamble. No one knows this better than Nicole Smith Holt, whose son Alec died in 2017.
So we're here today remembering Alec and all the others that have lost their life from insulin rationing. It's amazing to know that, he would still be alive today if I had known at that time, 2 years ago, that I had the option to cross the border to purchase completely affordable insulin. It's not just a bunch of people whining and crying about the price of insulin. There's a true impact. My family was destroyed by this. I lost a child. You know, I'll never have my son back, you know.
In 2015, Alec was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 23 years old. At the time, while still under Nicole's insurance, Alec's insulin cost between $200 and $300 a month. But when he turned 26 years old, under America's healthcare law, he was no longer able to remain on her insurance. And without it, the cost of his insulin shot up over 4 times.
When he went to the pharmacy the first time without my insurance card in hand, his 2 types of insulin, his diabetic supplies, anything that he needed to take care of himself, costed $1,300 a month. He wasn't planning on it being that expensive.
So what did he do?
He went home with nothing.
Because Alec earned $40,000 a year as a restaurant manager, he didn't qualify for government assistance. Nicole believes Alec started rationing his insulin because he couldn't pay for it. This made him susceptible to DKA, or diabetic ketoacidosis, a dangerous side effect of type 1 diabetes when the body doesn't get enough insulin.
It starts shutting down your bowels, which would why his stomach was hurting so bad. And then it'll work your way up your intestinal system, and your intestines start shutting down, and your kidneys start shutting down, and then your lungs start shutting down, and then your heart starts to go. And as the heart starts to go, you typically go into cardiac arrest, or you go into a coma. You start having seizures, and it's an extremely painful way to die. Alec came off of my insurance on June 1st of 2017 and was found dead on June 27th of 2017. So he lasted 26 days without my insurance.
He's a handsome kid.
Yeah,
It's a great smile.
they kind of look a little bit alike.
Yeah, you do. The high cheekbones, the big eyes.
Yeah.
Smile.
Nicole and her family learned that Alec had been stretching out what little insulin he had left until his next paycheck. He was found dead 3 days short of his payday.
What do you miss most?
Just having him here.
Yeah, it's having a big brother around.
Yeah.
Who do you hold accountable?
I hold the pharmaceutical companies partially accountable. I hold our government partially accountable. I hold myself partially accountable. As Mom, I should have seen this. I should have been there to protect him. I should have been with him. But ultimately, the system failed Alec.
Insulin is kind of a perfect storm of all the problems with our drug industry and all the public failure to regulate it meaningfully. It's a century-old technology that was gifted to humanity by the university researchers who came up with it. And since that time, prices have only increased for something that by now should really be essentially free.
The reasons behind the high cost of prescription medication in the U.S. are complicated. But one main factor is that the government doesn't regulate or negotiate the prices of drugs directly with companies. Instead, it lets them set their own prices, which puts the burden of ever-increasing costs on patients.
Our government has taken less seriously than some others our responsibility to provide affordable medicine for our people. In Canada and many countries around the world, governments are active purchasers and they say, how do I get a good deal? How do I negotiate for the best deal? In the United States, we simply say, Pharma, tell us what you want and we'll give it to you. They can charge essentially as much as any of us would pay to care for our sick and our loved ones. No constraints.
No constraints on drug pricing means that for many Americans, no amount of planning can prepare them for the cost of an illness.
Stay in the yard, babe. What are you doing? What are you doing?
In 2015, at just 50 years old, Jackie Trapp was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called multiple myeloma.
To keep it at bay. It's a tricky little cancer, and because it's a blood-borne cancer, surgery is not an option. Radiation is only palliative. It's really just to make you feel better. Drugs are all we have.
Her doctor prescribed Revlimid, an oral chemotherapy drug manufactured by the U.S. biotechnology company Celgene.
Correct, and that's just for the one drug.
And it has no generic in the United States.
Revlimid, quite simply, is the only form of treatment available for me for my cancer.
Revlimid has kept Jackie's cancer stable for the last 4 years. But the bills to pay for it and her overall health care have shattered her financial stability.
The first one I got was January 6th of 2017, and the total member responsibility right here is $11,148.14. Then I got the second bill on January 30th, and that one was for $12,039.89, total member responsibility.
And here's 3 weeks later.
3 weeks later, here we
Another
are.
bill for $12,000
$12,000
is your responsibility.
Yeah.
This must have been terrifying, though. While you're fighting cancer, in a period of 6 weeks, you get 3 bills for the one drug that may extend your life, and it's looking like it's going to be, over $12,000 a month.
I can honestly tell you that when I was diagnosed, there were some tears there, but I cried far more when these bills came along. I've spent so much more emotional energy on finding ways to fund my treatment than I ever have on my cancer. And
At first, Jackie's insurance didn't cover Revlimid.
my husband's saying, well, we can do this, I'll sell my truck, that'll give us the money. But if I'm gonna be on this indefinitely, this is not a solution. We need a longer term solution. We're not gonna be paying this out of pocket. We'll be bankrupt before you know it, and then what?
So Jackie spent up to 50 hours a week at times, cobbling together a plan to bring down her costs.
This is my Part D, this is my supplemental policy. These are different, when I was involved in marketplace insurance.
If you want to live, then this is the amount of paperwork required.
Oh yeah, it's pretty complicated. I've been lucky, I've been ahead of the game. I've been able to navigate pretty effectively through the system. Others are not.
Just trying to wrap my head around how you can afford this drug. You have multiple insurance plans. You're on Medicare. You have found a loophole in a new state law that's helped you. You're in disability and you're on a discount program. With all of that, how much does it cost you a year still?
In any given year, it's anywhere from $15,000 to $22,000 for me, out of pocket.
$15,000 to $22,000 a year. That's after insurance, and
That's
out
after
of your pocket.
That's out of my pocket.
One of the most effective ways to bring down the cost of medicine for people like Jackie is to have more affordable generic options on the market. But experts say that major pharmaceutical companies use a complex web of strategies to block generic competition, so they can maintain control of the drug's price and protect their monopoly.
A company that has a monopoly goes to its potential competition and says, hey, we've got a better deal for both of us. We'll give you X dollars to just keep your product off the market. So the patent holder benefits from getting to preserve their monopoly and their monopoly pricing. The generic firm benefits by getting an assured payday, and the public loses because we don't get more affordable medicine through competition.
This strategy that drug companies use to keep competitors out of the market is legal, and it's not the only one.
The way the pharmaceutical companies today use the patent system, they stack hundreds of patents on a particular drug, such that they basically get as long as they can out of that particular protection in order to prevent competition coming in. And we all know once competition comes in, prices drop.
How does the patent process affect a drug like Revlimid?
I think there are some 107 patents on this drug. or patent applications, and of which 70 are granted. And that prevents anybody from coming in. If I'm a generic competitor, I have to litigate my way through all these to get into the marketplace, and so it delays. So instead of coming to the market maybe next year, I might have to wait 2-3 years because of the way the regulatory system works in terms of you have to end the litigation before you can get approval for your generic.
Industry experts told us that strategies like these have set back generic competition on prescription drugs by years. Celgene, which manufactures Revlimid, did not respond to a list of questions we sent them.
I'm all for making a healthy profit and protecting intellectual property for a period of time, but they've abused that. It doesn't matter how many great new innovations there are and great new drugs there are that are going to keep people alive if you can't afford them. Drugs don't work if we can't afford to take them.
This is a total ripoff, and we are ending it. We will work every day to ensure all Americans have access to the quality, affordable medication they need and they deserve. And we will not rest until this job of unfair pricing is a total victory for the USA.
President Trump promised to make the high cost of prescription drugs a top policy priority. He's talked about bringing down the cost of some drugs, in line with their prices in other countries. But experts we spoke to say his proposals don't address the root of the problem, the drug companies' monopoly power, which according to a survey, more than 70% of Americans want to rein in.
When you look at the polling with the people, you say there's political will at the electorate level for radical change on this issue.
Yeah.
But there's a disconnect between the political will of the people and the actual political will in Congress. Why is there a disconnect there?
Money. The industry has extreme lobbying power, about 3 lobbyists for every member of Congress, and spends a great deal on elections, on supporting candidates in the United States. When the pharmaceutical industry says we need more incentives to conduct a certain line of research, no one wants to stand in the way of that. So the legal climate continues to favor the industry more and more, which means they can abuse all of us in the form of a price with unchecked power.
Federal filings show that Pharma, the group that represents most of the U.S.'s largest drug manufacturers, spent about $27.5 million on lobbying in 2018. When they're asked about the high cost of prescription drugs, the pharmaceutical industry often makes this argument. Lowering drug prices would stifle research and development and impact the creation of new life-saving drugs.
This is obviously extremely important to sustain the wave of innovation that
Patrick Kilbride, who works for a pro-business lobbying group, is sympathetic to this view.
Patients' illnesses in new ways.
I've talked to so many people in this industry that says there's an entire set of strategies for extending patents that drug companies are using.
Well, this is all, I see this as all part of a process of attempting to stigmatize an industry that has delivered tremendous value to people everywhere. I think it's unfortunate. And it's part of a bigger ethos that's taken hold that big business is bad.
But you have Americans flooding over the border to buy prescription drugs in Canada. Like, how do you explain that or wrap your head around that and say, yep, this is a system that we want?
Well, you could say that other countries are getting away with murder, and I wouldn't disagree. They are not paying their fair share for the overall system. The political situation of those countries has created a situation where the manufacturers have no pricing power. The system that we have works pretty well to create the right incentive for investment, but also to allow that follow-on innovation. And if, high prices on the front end are part of that, well, that's part of the process. In a free market, a producer has the right to set their price. Buyers can take it or leave it.
But if there's only one drug that treats your illness, and that company is the only one that makes and sells that drug, there is no market of choice, and you have to take that drug or die.
I don't think it's any given company's fault that there's a lack of competition. The fact is that if someone else can figure out a better way to do that, they could knock a particular medicine off the market in no time at all. In fact, we see that all the time.
The only counter-argument you can make is that prices should be high in order to fund innovation, but there's no limit to that argument. I mean, under that logic, companies can literally charge anything they want and it would always be a good deal for the public, which is what's happening, and it's not a good deal for the public. Medical innovation is expensive and we need to pay for it. That doesn't mean prices should be whatever the companies want them to be, which is the current regime.
We made multiple interview requests to the top 3 insulin manufacturers,
See if we can get a rep from Eli Lilly on the phone.
but none of them agreed to an interview.
I'd like to get someone from Novo Nordisk on camera. All right, so I want to try Sanofi.
Sanofi responded with a statement explaining the various discount programs they offered to patients and encouraged them to call the company's hotline for information. We decided to approach someone else who might know more. Health Secretary Alex Azar has been the face of the Trump administration's drug price policy. But he has another connection to this.
Americans want and deserve a solid healthcare safety net.
He was a top executive at insulin manufacturer Eli Lilly, and during his time there, the price of the company's best-selling insulin more than doubled. We wanted to ask him why.
Secretary Azar, can we just ask you one question about prescription prices? Insulin doubled when you were president at Lilly USA.
I will get back to you.
Why didn't you do
today.
something about it then?
I'm sorry, he has a really busy day and he's got to run.
Secretary Azar, I know you can hear me. I know that when you were president at Lilly USA, insulin prices doubled. Why didn't you do something about it then? When President Trump said pharmacy companies were getting away with murder, was he referring to companies like you were the president of?
It's corruption and it's legal. Companies are free to do most of what we're talking about here today. They can pay to delay their competition. They can extend monopolies for years or even decades. They can spike prices by 5,000% if they want to. Making medicines affordable is not a question of cracking down on illegal behavior. It's a question of cracking down on legalized corruption in the system that we have created.
Alec's death is not an isolated situation. Since Alec has passed away, I've been in contact with at least 10 other families who had recently lost one of their loved ones from the same thing. And ironically, half of them were 26-year-olds. Pharmaceutical companies need to lower the list prices. People are dying, and the only way to stop that from happening is to make the product affordable.
So are we making those sandwiches now? Would you like that?
Jackie is now 4 years into a 5-year prognosis with the help of Revlimid. But to make it this far, she and her husband have had to drain their savings and some of the money they'd set aside for retirement. They're now selling pieces of their life online, like furniture and dishes they were giving for their wedding.
My husband and I both have been incredibly careful people, very conservative with our money. We were the kind of people that whatever the maximum was that we could put away for retirement, we did.
All the things you're supposed to do.
We did all the things we're supposed to do, absolutely. You know, we generally had anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 in the bank just as a safety net. That's gone. That's long gone. We're not going to be that 75-year-old couple with a 50-year anniversary party. It's not really in the cards for us. And we've dealt with that, but I don't want to leave him completely broken and completely bankrupt at the same time. And unless something changes, that's likely to be the case, unless I decide to no longer seek treatment.
You're literally saying that you have to make a financial choice
I will.
on how long to live.
I will. There will be a tipping point, and I will have to make a decision as to when to stop treatment and choose to die so that I can leave my husband with enough so that he can make it through the next 30 years of his life. That's what's at stake for me.